I was just able to sit down with Kurt Nishimura. He is a local real estate agent with a ton of experience in our industry inside of commercial and residential. We just had a really, really nice conversation. He was able to share how he started his career at a family office that would really, truly underwrite anything that the math would math. And so I love that because I think right now real estate has been a little bit challenging, and a lot of people with these capital um, requirements are looking at things a little bit differently, a little bit more creatively. And he has been doing this his entire career. He's heavily involved in AREAA, which is a real estate association specific to the Asian American population, working to educate the population and obviously a quickly growing population in Arizona to help network and connect everyone. So we had a really fun conversation about his journey, his focus on mentorship and why that matters and paying that forward and how it's actually works for everyone when it's done right. So I really enjoyed these 30 minutes with him, and I hope you do as well.
I'm Stephanie, a mother, a pilot. I don't know. Am I trying to say the same things or just talk? Welcome to the Wisdom and Wealth Podcast, where the stories you don't hear are the ones that matter most. I'm Stephanie, a mother, pilot, and commercial real estate professional with deep roots in Arizona. I was an entrepreneur at 24 and sold my first business at 27, and I've been navigating commercial real estate ever since. We are going to be sitting down with some of the biggest names in business around the Phoenix metropolitan area, as well as community leaders and nonprofit organizations that are continuing to improve our community. I'm very excited for the things that they chose to share when they thought nobody was listening. What I've learned in hearing their stories aren't just the struggles and how we overcome them, but really building a network around you of people that know you, trust you, want to help you, and you are trying to give just as much to them as they give to you every single day. And never connecting that relationship to a transaction. It's about the relationships, the connections, and understanding the true stories that shape success. And I hope you find inspiration in the conversations we have.
Welcome to the Wisdom and Wealth Podcast.
Great. Thank you. My name is Kurt Nishimura. I am a commercial and residential realtor here in Arizona. I started my career actually in real estate, but on the accounting side and doing SEC reporting. But then I saw the people that were actually in realtors, because I was doing the accounting, making a lot of money, a lot more than I was making. And those people that make the business rather than report the business get paid more. And, I actually got laid off from my job. I was working for a family office. Some people might know it, Pivotal Group.
Yeah.
I was in charge of acquisitions, and it really allowed me to kind of learn how to underwrite deals for commercial real estate. And we were unbiased when it came to what type of sector. So whether it's land, industrial, office, retail, hotels, multifamily, it didn't matter. It's whatever the opportunity was in the market, because all those markets actually have different timing, especially residential and commercial. So when you don't have deal opportunities in the residential market, you can find them in the commercial market and so forth. And I think that's really helped me as a realtor to be able to underwrite deals for my clients. I work with a lot of investors, but I also work a lot with first-time home buyers, just people with their real estate needs on the residential side. And I've done a lot of 1031 exchanges for investors. So I know how to underwrite deals. I kind of know the temperament of people that are buying for their own real estate needs, family needs. So I can look from both lenses.
So question for you, early in your career, I know you said you started with accounting, but so often in our industry, somebody in our family was involved. There was some way we saw the real estate industry from the inside out that led you into it at some capacity. Was that the case for you, or was it just strictly, I was just trying to be an accountant and landed in real estate?
So what happened was, when I finally decided to buy a home in Phoenix, because I decided, this is where I want to live. I had a realtor that I actually was in an apartment building where they put 10% of whatever my rent was towards closing costs if I chose to use to work with a realtor from a certain firm. And the person kept on pushing me towards a higher and higher price. and not
Mm.
actually showing me houses that I felt were in my, price range. It wasn't necessarily my price range, but it was something that I was uncomfortable with actually spending on my first house. And, I'm sure they would have worked out and they would have been good deals, but it was out of my comfort zone. I finally
Mhm.
just pointed to a house and I said, "Is there any way we can go look at this one?" And she kind of just acquiesced, and I could tell she was disappointed. But we ended up making an offer on that, and I got a very good price on a house in Willow.
Mm.
And it was right before the run up of real estate back in 2003. And within 2 years, my house actually doubled.
I was gonna say
Um,
Willow. You hit the target there. It's a great spot.
yeah. And I was so very lucky that I had bought in there. I actually, because I worked at Pivotal Group and I got to see all the builder data,
Hmm.
I actually sold in October 2005 before the crash.
Oh
And I
wow.
actually rented for a couple of years. And I was actually interviewed by the Arizona Republic as to why I made that decision.
Yeah.
And I just said, I just see an inventory buildup. I'm fortunate that I get to see some data that other people don't. And then I rented for a few years before buying back in. Unfortunately, I bought back in too early before prices really crashed. But I remember in the parking lot of the tennis club I'm at, that people were yelling at me like, "Kurt, why are you saying that? You're hurting our industry." And one guy even said, "Hey, Kurt, chicks dig guys that own a home, not rent."
You're
And
like, oh, then let me change my whole strategy.
yeah, and I was just like, "Oh, okay, whatever." Um, but because I was really disappointed in the service level that I got, I'm like, I know I could do a better job.
Mhm.
So in 2009, when I actually had my license already in place for my job at Pivotal. That I just focused on the $7,500 tax credit that they were giving to first-time home
Yep.
buyers, and they offered that for about 2 year period, and that became the basis for my business, just education. And I used my knowledge as my construction background to point out construction defects that were in the home, and that gave my clients a lot of comfort, especially my investor clients.
Hmm.
They're like, this person knows a little bit more than the average realtor because they can point out things that are going to cost me money down the line.
Hmm.
So because of that, I started having, a following of people and started getting referrals. I think as a realtor, when you're brand new, most people don't tell you that, it takes you about 3 to 6 months to really get that first client. And then you have to close them. And unfortunately, a lot of realtors don't make it the first 3 years.
Right. That
Um,
they die on the vine, right? It's a big commitment and a huge risk, especially when if you have a skill set like accounting where you can account on that paycheck, it's going to be there
yeah.
to make that jump. It's a leap.
Yeah. So you don't see a lot of realtors are single household earners
Hmm.
become realtors because they don't have the bandwidth or the savings needed for you to grow your business. And I was just very fortunate that I picked a niche that worked for me. And I was just willing to work with anyone that wanted to work with me. And fortunate that because a lot of the parents were providing the down payment for their kids, they wanted to pick someone that was similar in age to them.
Hmm.
And their kids kind of came along for the ride. And, it was like actually a lot of people from my tennis club that were like, "Please, use Kurt and we'll give you the down payment."
But how good are you at tennis?
I'm pretty good. I played Division II tennis in college,
Where?
Western Illinois.
Nice.
And so for me, tennis and golf is actually where I've got a lot of my clients because there's this idea of transference of trust that you might be familiar with
Hmm.
that, people are like, well, if he's good at tennis, he must be a good realtor. Well, the two could be mutually exclusive. But fortunately for me, they gave me their trust. I did a good job for them and they referred me to other people. So I was able to kind of make my way through that first 3 years that is very critical for a realtor.
I was a competitive tennis player just as an adult. I didn't play in school. And and I do golf, but one of those things that I always valued about tennis, especially if you were kind of accidentally crossing that work line that you didn't necessarily intend to, it just was happening and you saw the potential clients on the other side of the net. What I've loved about that sport specifically is two things. One, no matter how stressful your day is, all you can do is focus on that green ball coming at you. Otherwise, you don't have a game. So you literally have to check out of whatever just happened in the hours leading up to that game. Right? And then B, you see how people
Absolutely.
work through conflict and their own personal frustration. And I think that's where a lot of the trust comes from. It's when things didn't go your way, how did you respond?
And specifically, I'm a doubles player.
Uh-huh.
So, you're playing as part of a team.
Hmm.
You're really setting up your partner to be successful. And as a realtor, you have to be able to do that. You have
Hmm.
to understand your partner's game, know what their limitations are, know what their strengths are, and work with that to try to win. At the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. You have a goal in mind and you try to achieve that goal. And, anyone that's been an athlete at a fairly high level, one of the things that it really teaches you is mindset.
Hmm.
Having the right mindset going into any situation really improves your chances for success.
Hmm.
And that's really the benefit of being in sports is really, you have to practice to get better. You have to be kind of in that zone while you're on the court. Your mind can't be floating somewhere else.
Mm-mm.
And it
Not even
teaches
for a
you so many
second.
yeah, so many life skills.
Well said. There is a woman, and I'll kind of use this to bridge us to both of our Pacific Island connection. But there's a woman right now, I don't know if you've been following her, that's rowing solo. Did you hear this?
Oh, no, I haven't followed her. No.
I'm spacing her name right now, but she's rowing solo from California to the Hawaiian Islands. And it was supposed to take about 90 days, and she's ahead of track. She's done this before on a team of four, but now she's doing
Wow.
it solo, and she documents her journey daily. She's about 12 or 13 days in now. But one of the really cool things is to watch is in real time the endurance sport coming out in her, and then the mental struggle and going through it. And quitting's not an option. You're in the middle of nowhere alone, right? So
Yeah.
it's fascinating. So I'm going to use that to kind of bridge us to your association work. So tell us what it is, how it works, how you got involved, and I'm sure it's quickly evolving these days.
Sure. So it's called AREAA, not to be confused with ASREA, which some people do, but it's the Asian Real Estate Association of America. It's a nonprofit to support the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community because we trail in home ownership from the national average by over 10%. When this organization first started 20 years ago, we actually were close to 20% below the national average. And it's really because of education of the community that we've been able to help them because Asians actually put a lot of trust in education of their children.
Hmm.
And, culturally, we're brought up not to take on debt if we can, to pay things with cash. Well, we've taught people that if you start your home ownership journey early, that forced savings and the tax, savings that you get from the interest write-off, you're a lot better off to get that process started as soon as you can and not wait till you have 30 or 40%.
Hmm.
You know, there was a study by NAR that showed that people that were renters prior to COVID and then after COVID, their net worth only went up, $5,000. But someone that actually bought a home before then, their net worth went up like 250,000 because you saw the big run up in real estate. So if you can get that process started earlier in life, the better off for you. And we understand that people need to rent sometimes because they don't know where their job's going or they're not sure where they want to live. So there's a place for rental. But if you know that you're going to be somewhere for a long time, you really should, try to buy a property earlier in life just so you can get that forced savings started. So AREA has 45 chapters across North America. We have 19,000 members. And people often say, well, do you have to be Asian to join? No, you don't have to be Asian. I do joke with people that you do have to like Asians. Um, but, um,
As a rule of thumb
but
in life.
yes, but the benefit really is not only when people serve a mission like that that's bigger than themselves, you really get to see their true colors. And it's actually helped me get referrals to a lot of feeder markets to the Phoenix area that I wouldn't have had without it. And a lot of times, since I'm not competing against people in those markets, Chicago, San Francisco, they're sharing with me things that are successful for them in their market.
Hmm.
Sometimes people are reluctant to share what's happening for them in Phoenix because they don't suddenly want that to lose
Hmm.
market share. But, when you're establish a friend in San Francisco, Chicago, Seattle, Los Angeles, in Hawaii, Hawaii considers, Las Vegas and Arizona as kind of like the eighth and ninth island. So if you're able to make that connection with some of the real estate professionals in that market, it can be a great feeder for referrals.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I know we talked about that in our prep call, but during the recession, when I'd sold a wellness company and in my early 20s and kind of didn't know what to do next. So I was just, and there was no money to be made in Phoenix, none. There was everybody you knew was either one or both people in the household had lost their jobs. And the circle I was in, we were too young to have the savings to fall back on, but we were old enough to own a home and have a mortgage and have some debt under us. So it was really, really, really hard. So I used that time and I went to Hawaii and I transitioned a construction company into a solar company for the solar leasing. But to your point, the Hawaiian population that I worked with, Hawaiian and Japanese predominantly, were very, very quick to call Vegas home, right? The whole mainland had its own stigma, but Vegas was home. How do you think they established that, and how can Arizona compete?
Well, in Asian culture, and because Hawaii predominantly, you know, has a large Asian base, Asians like to gamble and they like deals. And not so much now, but for the longest time, Vegas used to be the place you would go for a cheap vacation. They
Mhm.
were famous in the 90s for the, $5 steak. You can't find a $5 steak in Vegas
Mm-mm.
anymore.
No.
But there were hotels, especially downtown Vegas, that would cater to, the Hawaiian audience. So, you would get your hotel room plus a book of, certificates for cheap breakfasts, lunch, dinners, some outings, and that kind of thing. And Hawaiians came there in droves. And if you live on the Big Island, there's a very dry side of that island that very much mimics Las Vegas and
Hmm.
Arizona. So and people on the island, even though they live on it, they do get island fever,
Hmm.
where they feel like they have to get off the island for a little
Hmm.
time for sanity purposes. So Vegas did a great job in marketing that.
Hmm.
I think it's something that Arizona could do, but they haven't. I'm going there actually specifically marketing Arizona as the ninth island because my grandfather was actually born on Kauai.
Mm.
And when I get a little bit more of a suntan, I look Hawaiian. Uh, and because people always say, hey, brah, which is, they think you're an islander and you start talking pidgin.
Hmm.
And, there's something called a Kamina discount
Oh yeah,
where,
significant too.
yeah, you're paying, sometimes 50 to 60% less than, people that are there on vacation if you know where to go and you know how to work the system.
It was
Um,
significant. I didn't even until I got my license there. I didn't realize, and then I would show it, not trying to leverage it, and I was like, "What?" It's, it
yeah, I
was
didn't even have to show it because
the
I looked the
assumption.
part. Yeah, you know.
Wisdom and Wealth is brought to you by Landmark Title. Their team sets the standard for personal attention, security, and service because what's important to you is important to them. Learn more about their title and escrow services at ltaag.com. Landmark Title, where experience matters.
Early in my career, I actually lived I didn't live. I actually lived in Chicago, but I was working for AmFac JB Hawaii, which
Hmm.
owned Liberty House, which became Macy's. So when I talked about AmFac and Liberty House, people just assumed I lived there.
Okay.
So, they extended the discount for me. So,
So taking the association back to Phoenix, I'm assuming this is a huge assumption, but with all the Taiwanese investments inside of TSMC and surrounding TSMC, has that changed the association at all and or do you want it to?
when I first started AREAA back in 2014, it actually started off as AREAA Arizona chapter, but we changed it to Greater Phoenix. And at the time, I think there was less than 2% Asian in Arizona.
Wow.
So in just to make sure that we actually had a chapter, I just made sure that we invited everybody. I said, we're all fighting for the same thing. We need access to housing. We have a large Hispanic base here. Language access is very, very important because we hear story upon story where, the young child in the family that's bilingual
Is doing
is
all the
actually
translating.
ending, all the translating. How do they translate words like appraisal and due diligence and escrow? And, the reason why the Asian population had a high default rate because they didn't understand that doing a short sale or a mortgage, adjustment was possible during the Great Recession.
Mm.
So they never reached out for help. And
Oh,
Asians were kind of taught not to bring our problems onto other people. So we don't explain that, hey, we're struggling. We need some help here. So unfortunately, there was a lot of the Asian population that did not seek help and lost their homes in the process.
that's incredibly sad.
So right now our chapter is growing because of the Taiwanese semiconductor and all the things that are happening with chip manufacturing. What people don't really realize though is, part of the reason why TSMC came here is because, China's shown a lot of aggression towards Taiwan.
Hmm.
And actually to protect their supply chain management, they wanted to find a place in the United States where they can have some factories to make sure there wasn't any disruption. TSMC already had a big plant in Japan. So a lot of the suppliers are actually Japanese. They're
Mm.
not Taiwanese or Chinese
Hmm.
because they have that existing relationship. So it's actually helped me because I'm Japanese American,
Mm.
providing me some opportunities. I know that some people might think that joining AREAA Greater Phoenix is a magic bullet for their business. It's not. You can certainly get business if you become part of AREAA Greater Phoenix. However, it's not a wishing well. It's not like you throw a dollar bill into the pond and in the well and then out pops $100 bill. No,
Hmm. Hmm.
you actually have to do work. You have to make relationships, just like any other place in business. It's not a magic bullet. But for those people that want to make the time investment and the relationship investment, it is possible. And one of the things that GPEC has done, which was responsible for actually bringing TSMC here, is in March, they actually had a MOU between GPEC, a group called JETRO, which is a Japanese trade organization that helps bring Japanese businesses to the United States, and ASU. That's a huge opportunity for the state of Arizona.
Hmm.
And most people don't even know that that MOU actually happened in March of this year.
You are
So I'm
like,
actually,
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Like, I
yeah,
have been not a fan. I have not made a lot of friends because that is who I believe we deserve credit for TSMC being here is GPAC and a lot of other organizations have said, no, it's me, it was us. And I knew Chris Camacho at the time when they were working on it. And he, like, it was without their efforts, in my opinion, we would not have this opportunity and this major economic boom. I know it takes a village, but they got it over the finish line.
you know, Arizona is really hidden gem, and most people don't realize how very lucky we are. The reason why we've won that is because the efforts of GPEC, but also we were able to say we have a sustainable water supply for you, which they needed,
Mhm.
stable power, access to power, and we don't have any natural disasters. Those were the three big reasons why we got that. If you look at some of the other states, yes, they've had some natural disasters. They can't say that they have access to, water or sustainable power. If you look at California, Nevada, they've misused their water. And because of that, they're hoping for a bigger allocation of the Colorado River. We actually use less water today than we did in 1960s because of how we've managed our water. We've done it very well. Now, that doesn't mean that we could be irresponsible. We always have to continue to look 50 and 100 years ahead to make sure we continue to protect that water supply. But as long as we do, we have a very bright future ahead of us.
Hmm. What are you the most optimistic about for your business looking forward the next 3, 5 years?
One of the things that I've noticed when I was working for the family office is that there are a lot of capital partners that are looking for great deals. And there are a lot of people that have good deals that can't seem to access capital.
Agreed.
And I'm working with a group that actually will do a lot of the horizontal work, the groundwork, bringing power, water, and pay for offset, improvements, impact fees and that kind of thing, which actually reduces the risk to the developer that is actually going vertical on a piece of land. And the other thing it does for the city is it switches that from being on their balance sheet to
Mm-hmm.
actually on their income statement. So they don't actually have to go through a bond referendum to make that happen. So, for people that are having a little bit of tough time penciling out their deals, being able to work with myself and the capital partner that I bring with me, that's a huge opportunity. Now, there are certain circumstances have to align to make that happen so everybody wins in that deal. But that's just another lever that I can offer in my business. You people that want to go vertical, that want to develop. There's a huge need for workforce housing, not so much in, let's say, central Phoenix, but in the outlying areas like Payson, like Sedona, um, where, you know, they have huge amount of hospitality, visitation and things, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't have enough workers or affordable housing for those workers in those areas. And in order to make that happen and continue to have visitation, they need workforce housing to make that
Yep.
happen. And I have a solution for that.
And are you taking it straight to city, or how are you approaching those solutions?
Well, we're working directly with the cities
Yeah.
that have expressed a need for the type of capital that we bring to the table. And, we're open for business.
I will love that. And one of the things you said right out of the gates that I loved, I'm just coming back from spending the 3-day weekend in Palm Beach. And the reason we ran out there kind of with very little notice was I am a West Coast girl, always have been, lived here in Hawaii. That's it. And so I didn't realize that last weekend was the last East Coast hoorah in Florida before everybody goes back for the winter to New York and Colorado, I'm sorry, Chicago and everywhere else. But we were able to sit down with a lot of our capital people in one weekend, right? You lost a long weekend because you're working, but the scenery wasn't terrible and the people were amazing. But what I learned in that is that a lot of capital players who traditionally had the one thing they would look at are looking at what makes sense. And so I would like to say they're leading with math, like your family office. It's like if the maths, let's do it, even if it's not our core business. So I was optimistic that I think it's been hard enough, long enough. Sorry, it sounds like my house is exploding. That that everybody's willing to get a little bit more creative in ways they weren't previously.
Yeah, no, I'm very proud of my work at AREAA. I served as national president in 2023, and that really did actually help my business because now that I'm through with my term, a lot of people know me on a more intimate level. And AREAA is not just about the mission of AREAA. There's other things that we do. We have a foundation as well. There's AREAA Global, that's now called Global Real Estate Alliance. We actually have a trip this year to South Korea on September 7th through the 10th. And then a small handful of us will be going with FIAPSI to Taiwan. And to be able to be a part of that, knowing everything that's going on with TSMC, to be able to make relationships with that is an amazing opportunity. And that wouldn't have happened without AREAA. There's an AREAA luxury event that's happening on August, I think, 17th in New York City. And to be able to showcase some of my listings to, people in New York, because 6.5 seems very expensive here. It is expensive. But for a New Yorker, it's not. Someone living in Manhattan, that wants a summer home or primary, because there was a huge migration during COVID from people from others because of that. So to be able to be in New York with some of the top luxury real estate agents as part of AREAA, that's a huge opportunity for me.
That's wonderful. Anything you would like us to know as we wrap up? And specifically, actually, I want to ask a different question. The younger version of anybody looking at this industry as a whole and all the different options you have in it, if you either could say something to the younger version of yourself or that person sitting on the fence, do I or don't I, what would you say?
If you're going to do it, find a mentor. Because they'll teach you things that are shortcuts in the industry, so you don't have to try to figure it out yourself. And as a mentor to AREAA members, what I'm finding actually is I'm going to learn just as much from them as they're going to learn from me. They're so much more advanced when it comes to AI and social media marketing than I am.
Yeah.
But I have a sphere of influence that I've accumulated over my 30 plus years and, just working, that they can leverage. And I'm already given both of them a referral. So that's the bonus of that, is I'm helping them with their business, not only, through education, but through deal flow.
Yeah.
And they're really helping me in the process because, I'll get a small referral paycheck from them. But I really get to see them in action. I really get to help them on a real live transaction as it's happening with someone that's within my sphere of influence. So
You love it.
I love it. I'm trying to pay it forward as best I can.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And thank you so much, Kurt. Thank you for reaching out. I know that there's been a lot of interest in the association, but everyone that I know that knows you and has worked with you has just raving reviews about their experience.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this opportunity.
All right. Let's play tennis sometime so you can whoop on me.
Absolutely. Or, play padel. I'm promoting padel now. So we'll
What
make
is
that
padel?
happen. It's like a pickleball court in a glass encased. It's kind of like racquetball.
I did see that. Is it hot? My first thought, because I'm seeing them outside, is it so hot? Because it's like this
No, there's
enclosed
a place
area.
in Tempe called Concord Padel that's air conditioned and they have a full bar.
Sold. I'll see you there.
Absolutely.
Thank you again so much, Kurt.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Get to that closing.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in today. I hope the conversation was inspiring for you. I hope you got a few laughs out of it and learned a thing or two. Please like, subscribe, and love you. See you next time. Now we're in the streets, y'all. I'm a mom.